Welcome to r/agedlikemilk, where the regime loves being a hypocrite. President Poopy Diaper. We need Greenland for national security, not for its minerals. If you look up and down the coast of Greenland, you can see Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. You sure about that one, bud? Oh yeah, it's just yet again another excuse for him to try and colonize a sovereign area. You know, exactly like Venezuela. Trump, you are lying. There are no Russian ships and no Chinese ships anywhere around Greenland. Zero. Well, you think he actually cares about that? Of course not. All he cares about is getting more land and more power to exploit as narcissist in chief. I mean, come on, did you really expect MAGA not to have a colonizer mindset? Of course they do. The United States needs to stay out of Venezuela. Let the Venezuelan people determine their future. We don't want other countries to choose our leaders, so we have to stop trying to choose theirs. Oh yeah, thinking that sovereign countries should stay sovereign as a Republican? I really wonder what they're saying right now. Oh yeah, Republicans don't actually have a belief system and just say whatever's most convenient for their regime. So I wouldn't expect any condemnation from Tulsi Gabbard anytime soon. We don't want other countries to choose our leaders. Yet Tulsi was perfectly okay working for the Russian plant that we currently have as president. Oh, the irony. I mean, Tulsi is also working for the Russians. So that part at least aligns. When she says our leaders, she's also referring to Putin. She's gonna be one of the speakers at TP, Toilet Pikachu, USA's anti-Super Bowl programming thingy. Oh yeah, a politician that's not actually a politician and is just a grifter. Yeah, sounds about right. Like I said before, these guys don't have fixed beliefs. You've got politicians, and you've got these people. Like I said before, the types that don't actually care, about what's going on, and just say what's most convenient for the regime. Not politicians, grifters and cultists. So sad that the Department of Justice and the FBI are slow walking, or even not giving the unredacted documents requested by Congress. An embarrassment to our country. Posted on the 2nd of April, 2018. Yeah, but now it really doesn't matter if the FBI is slow walking, not giving, or redacting documents, requested and voted to be released by Congress. Yeah, of course it doesn't matter now because your name's in it. And another thing, he's saying this while he was the president. Also, he was saying this about his own Department of Justice when he was president. Crazy. Watch. Bondi says the Justice Department will continue to follow the law for the release of the Epstein files. Well, funny thing is, no they didn't. By not releasing the full, unredacted Epstein files, and redacting 140 something pages of testimony on the date that Congress said you have to release the full unredacted files, means they broke the law. Congress told them to do something after a vote and a verdict, and they didn't do it. That's not following the law. That's not following the law. That's just trying to continue their very bad cover-up. I'm so glad that Trump is finally confirmed in the clear. Zero mention of his name within the files. Yeah, because the initial releases had his name redacted. And there was literal proof of them missing the redactions. Leaving a photo of him and Epstein in the files, and it coincidentally getting deleted off of the logs hours later. Yeah, he wasn't in the initial files, because they were covering it up yet again. Hopefully now, resources can be directed towards actual pedophiles instead of at our standing president. I still don't think your Injustice Department is actually trying to file charges against people in the files. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've not seen any arrests from these releases, because they're trying to protect people in power, or people bribing people in power. Downvote me all you want, the facts are out and they don't care about your feelings. Well, they weren't out, and your feelings is Trump must be innocent because I love him so much. Because you're a fucking cultist. Everyone knows that Trump has provably been on Epstein's plane. And now, even more than what was previously seen, he was very close with Epstein and has also had previous allegations of sexual assault. He's a predator. The full extent is still being covered up by MAGA. You can't help but say it's not your leader's fault. Because you've decided to build your entire political belief and odds are personality around some 80-year-old demented man-child who has no regard for anyone else on this planet except himself. The Joker investigated himself and found out he'd done nothing wrong and was completely exonerated. The citizens of Gotham celebrated now that the police could finally focus on real crime. This is what damage control looks like. He preemptively knows that he's gonna get downvoted for being full of shit, but he just has to vomit it out there to try and put his thumb on the scale of where the narrative actually is. He can only be downvoted. I mean, only Russians post there. Whatever happened to Trump being a pedo? Oh, nothing apparently. Because nothing matters anymore. Well, that's what the regime wants. Something that they don't benefit from, or something that opposes their power. They just try to wish it away. And, yeah, stick their heads in the sand and ignore it. The fact is, Trump was never a pedo. That was BS. BS spelled B''S, okay? From the left the whole time, with no evidence to back it up. Yeah, that's cool and all, except Trump is legally defined as a sexual predator, because he was found guilty of sexually abusing someone. There is evidence of him being a predator. There is evidence of him being a predator, and there is evidence of him being very close with notorious pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Really not hard to put two and two together. That's why the story died. The so-called smoking gun actually implicated powerful Democrats. Okay, if there's Democrats that are being proven to be sexual assaulters or pedophiles, put them in prison. Yeah, if there's a politician that turns out to be a predator or a pedo, put them in prison. Once that happened, the national media buried the story to protect Democrats. Ask a Trumper, what wrong could Trump do that would lose your support? And they literally have the hardest time answering. To be fair, that's their response to being asked things in general. You're telling me cultists that blindly follow their dear leader don't really have any critical thinking skills? No, of course not. As useless as asking Grinder Mike Johnson if he's seen the top news stories of the day about his own boss. Our new golden age of free speech, where opposition to immigration enforcement, also known as the fucking Gestapo, can trigger a federal investigation, restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. Ah yes, restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship by restricting freedom of speech and starting federal censorship. A memo from attorney Pam Bondi said that these agendas may merit a federal investigation. Anti-Americanism? Well, that's just regime speak for being against the regime. Anti-capitalism, also known as not being for corporations, essentially siphoning all of the wealth up to the rich and leaving the poor desolate. Anti-Christianity. So much for a separation between church and state, eh? Opposition to law and immigration enforcement. So criticizing them for their blatant breaches of constitutional and in general international human rights. Radical gender ideology. You're telling me that merits a federal investigation? Excuse me? And I'm assuming radical gender ideology is, being pro-trans rights. So yeah, really pro-free speech and freedom of expression, the First Amendment. Hostility towards traditional views on family, religion, and morality. And what would that be exactly? Traditional family, also being for, gay marriage, and, people not being forced to have a family. Religion, so being against a Christian ethno-state. And morality. Well, if they're talking about the regime's morality, being against murdering people without due process, missiling hundreds, that merits a federal investigation? Yeah, these guys are really the good guys, aren't they? Definitely. Charlie Kirk didn't spout hatred and call people fascists and racists. Close your mouth. Oh look, him doing that exact same thing. Joe Biden is a fascist. From Charlie Kirk. Yeah, who would have expected that, am I right? To say these people project would be an understatement. He didn't deserve to die, but he's sure as shit didn't deserve to be remembered as anything other as a hate monger. Nope. My neighboring city voted to rename a street after him though, in California. Hey chat, if you guys want to see more of this gay guy reading stuff, you should totally like, subscribe and share, because it really helps a lot. And also press that weird hype button. It does something apparently. Anyways, thanks for watching, and back to the video. Elon Musk, our richest fraudster. I'll put a man on Mars in 10 years. Dated 13 years ago. Yeah, great job. And if you look at what he's saying now, he says literally next year. As of recording, literally the year starting 5 days from now is going to be the year that he sends 5 of his starships, which, keep in mind, haven't even got to orbit yet. Yeah, that's really gonna happen, isn't it? He's the king of overpromise and underdeliver. I've hated Elon Musk long before it was cool. He's nothing but a con man, lies to the public, and constantly lies to investors. I really don't know how Tesla investors put up with his non-stop bullshit, lying, overpromising, and underdelivering. Oh, kind of like those Tesla Roadsters that never got produced. Yeah, what happened to those? Overpromise, never deliver. He plays his followers like a fiddle. It's hilarious how they can't apply any critical thinking. Free speech, he screamed, whilst making sure it's actually only his sort of free speech. So pretty much just hate speech and bashing everything that he personally doesn't like. And the low IQ throngs love it. One group of people that might be just as annoying and obnoxious as MAGA cultists are Musk cultists. And mix the two? Ugh, Jesus, that's an even worse mix. Do you guys remember when Elon Musk knew that Trump was in the Epstein files, but paid $275 million to elect the president anyway? Well, yeah, he may be in the Epstein files, but he wanted someone nice and corrupt, to allow him to continue breaking the law. Like committing so much fucking securities fraud, deceiving investors, making promises that just aren't true, and continuing to operate his destructive missile range in Texas. Because, I don't think any not corrupt politician would actually allow him to get away with the shit that he's getting away with. For someone who never shuts up, Elon's silence on Epstein is so loud. Well, yeah, he already nearly had a really bad falling out with President Trump already for mentioning him in the files, and he doesn't want to risk that again and get arrested. How long before the EU is gone? Abolish the EU! What's the bet he's saying this because EU's got regulation against his cars or businesses? Oh, what's that? Cybertrucks aren't allowed on EU roads because of, the fact that they're big metal boxes that aren't fucking safe? Who'd have thought? Go to Mars. There's no censorship of Nazi salutes there. Good point, but he's never gonna get there because his fucking stupid massive ships don't work. What's it now, like 10, 11 launches, and they still can't fucking launch it? Oh, but they're meant to send 5 of them to Mars next year, definitely. Speaking of, Elon Musk's Starship explosion endangered hundreds of airline passengers. Yeah, really cares about the everyday person. You know, exploding his big, useless missiles over the Caribbean. You know, for science, of course. Because, you know, doing the aerospace equivalent of putting $100 million worth of cash into a field and setting it alight to see if it generates heat is really worthwhile science. On January 16th, SpaceX conceded that the latest prototype of its enormous Starship spacecraft had experienced a rapid unscheduled disassembly during its ascent burn, a tongue-in-cheek admission that the massive rocket had exploded mid-flight. Catastrophically, by the way. You know, a really good place to put billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars into. Countless videos circulating online showed a massive stream of re-entering pieces of the Starship rocket blazing across the evening sky over the islands of Turks and Caicos. It was a dazzling sight to behold as the destruction streaked across the sky. Just because it's dazzling does not mean it's good. And I don't know about you, but exploding a multi-$100 million spaceship over the Caribbean isn't really something that should be celebrated, despite what SpaceX and Elon Musk wants you to think. Because if you treat it like the bad thing it is, then investors won't give them more money. Success is uncertain, but entertainment is guaranteed. Gleeful Elon Musk wrote at the time. Ah yes, endangering hundreds of people. Really entertaining. It wasn't all fun and games. Massive explosion of a rocket turns out isn't actually fun? Yeah, who'd have thought? Residents of Turks and Caicos, for instance, soon found scraps of burnt rubber and other rocket pieces littering the Caribbean islands' otherwise pristine beaches. And something else Elon Musk doesn't want you to realize is that his whole massive missile test facility is built right by the habitats of sea turtles and other endangered species. And yeah, exploding rockets right around, next to, or above habitats of endangered species, sea turtles, dolphins, etc. really isn't good for the environment. But hey, those rockets that haven't even gotten to orbit are going to take us to Mars next year, so it's worth the sacrifice, right? And now, 11 months later, the Wall Street Journal has obtained Federal Aviation Administration documents revealing that 3 aircraft, a JetBlue passenger plane, an Iberia Airlines flight, and a private jet, carrying a total of 450 people total, were in far greater danger than SpaceX and government officials let on at the time. What? The bought government officials and SpaceX, who has interest in hiding the fact that their missile testing facility is endangering humans and nature alike, is hiding that fact? Who'd have thought? The report also highlights the possibility that SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's extremely close relationship and ample influence in Washington, D.C. may have played a role in FAA officials looking the other way as the company's Starship rockets kept exploding during tests. Correction, keep exploding during tests. Every Starship launch has resulted in either the entire craft or part of the craft exploding, all for the sake of imaginary science that isn't happening. All for the sake of imaginary science that isn't happening, and for private investors and Musk cultists alike to basically laugh at fireworks and call it progress. It's not progress, it's endangering countless lives for no reason. While all 3 planes landed successfully on January 16th, if any one of them had been struck by a piece of Starship debris, it could have been a major disaster. Air traffic controllers had to scramble to ensure the planes were far away from the debris field, leading to an increase in their workload. Of air traffic controllers who are already running short. A potential extreme safety risk, according to the FAA report obtained by the Wall Street Journal. Oh yeah, but they'll keep launching those massive, useless rockets every 2 or 3 months or so. You know, for science. Air traffic controllers were left bewildered. I don't know if you guys were advised, but there was a rocket launch, and apparently the rocket exploded, and there was debris in the area between us and Miami, which basically covers our entire airspace. One controller in the area said, "So I need to keep all the aircraft clear of that area because of the debris." There is a reason that satellites and rockets specifically get dumped in Point Nemo, also known as the most isolated spot on the planet. And if there's plans to ditch rockets or satellites in other areas, It is very much well known, and a significant amount of airspace prior is cleared. The fact that this happened and people were so horrifically underplaying the severity was and is incredibly frustrating. It was shockingly dangerous, and that risk still persists as long as the government essentially okays Musk to explode these rockets to his heart's content, instead of, actually making his rockets perform as opposed to purposely exploding them. SpaceX failed to inform the agency through its official hotline that Starship had exploded, per the documents, so endangering people even more. The hotline is designed to alert officials at the FAA so they can act in time and keep pilots away from danger. Previously determined no-fly debris zones were activated 4 minutes after SpaceX lost contact with its Starship vehicle. The Elon Musk-led firm didn't confirm with the FAA it had lost the craft until 15 minutes later. SpaceX has since denied that anybody was ever in danger in an excoriating statement posted to Musk's social media platform X. Well, of course they're not going to admit that their honestly disgusting missile testing program is endangering people and wildlife. A criminal's usually not going to plead guilty, are they? Yet another misleading story, the company's official account wrote, echoing the voice of its CEO, who has an extremely troubled relationship with the news industry. The reporters were clearly spoon-fed incomplete and misleading information from detractors with ulterior motives. Or, people who aren't just blindly believing SpaceX and, actually care about nature, wildlife, and innocent airline passengers that your company put in danger. I'm more inclined, especially based off of Elon Musk's history, to believe that the people who provided this information are the latter. People who actually care and aren't just blind cult members. They are running a rocket bomb factory. They literally all blow up. What kind of shit is this? Who is paying to do this? Well, turns out the NASA and Department of Defense, i.e. the taxpayers. More than $3.4 billion so far. Well, not so fun fact, the contract was given to SpaceX by a NASA employee who didn't really have the authority, or not even the NASA administrator's oversight, to provide SpaceX with the contract, and then coincidentally started to work for SpaceX a few months after. There was not any sort of shady shit involved. Of course not. Especially not with Elon Musk.